Hello and welcome to today's video. Allow me to introduce myself as this is the first video of this kind on my channel. My name is Dan, I go by the moniker of Dan Show Online, and I would change my channel name and drop the act, but I doubt anyone could be successful in an online space talking about video games under their own legal name. Anyway, the reason for this video. From the 24th of March to the 26th, 2023, there's a lot of 20s in there was an open beta for Diablo 4. This allowed everyone to try the game for the first time, in contrast to the earlier closed beta that was exclusive to pre-orders and people who bought a specific meal from KFC, swore themselves to the occult and renounced all worldly possessions. So, I downloaded the open beta earlier this week, excited to try out the game after watching Asmongold's video from the aforementioned closed beta for rich people and chicken cultists. Everything I'd seen about the game sparked my interest before this beta, the character creation, art style and story. I could already tell I was going to enjoy the experience of playing the beta before it even started. So Friday rolls around, I have dinner with my children. They asked me to play some educational games on the internet, like math games, scratch coding, stuff like that. And while they're doing this, I checked the progress on Diablo 4. It's installed. Okay, let's open it and see if it's ready. And here's where the first issue with the open beta began, you see. As with pretty much every beta in AAA history, there was a queue to log in. I got into the queue and checked the time, 3 hours remaining. Oh bugger. I let my children play the games and asked my son to periodically check the timer on D3. No way it would finish before their bedtime, so I just leave it to run. It's almost bedtime now and I check again. Queue timed out. The screen blares back at me in an overly indignant fashion. Why, Blizzard? Why have you forsaken me? So I queue up again and there's 2 hours remaining. Okay, that's fine. I put the kids to bed. Timer slowly counts down and it's time. There's no errors. I get to 0 and it enters into the game. Now it's time to enjoy the beta. I created my first character of the open beta, a female barbarian named Leandra. Unfortunately for Leandra, I'd chosen rather foolishly to start the open beta in hardcore, knowing full well that I'm not a veteran Diablo player with years of experience, let alone someone who's mastered the barbarian class in previous titles. So I sauntered through the game for a few levels, deeply immersed in the story that's unfolding before me. Strange creatures eating horses, the return of Lilith, the mad villagers who decapitated their local priest and used his corpse in a summoning ritual for demons, being drugged and then dragged to a sacrificial chamber by said villagers and saved by a monk who they previously declared to me was a madman. This was a great opening and it really set the scene for the bleak winter postcard of an area. After the monk tells me to go into the chapel, I had a vision of what happened to the priest and why. This is like a scene from Shark's Tale where Will Smith's character loses all self-control and bets $5,000 on the seahorse race, consequences be damned. So now the priest asked me to find a hermit in the woods. Of course I comply with this request. First of all, we're in the frigid wastelands, I've lost my horse to a demon already, my only love interest is a man who's sworn himself to the church. It is not looking good, Brev. I venture out into the woods and stumble upon a cabin. Inside I find the apothecary stores and a hidden room behind a bookcase. Scriptures about vampires and other demons. Anyway, a cutscene plays where a hooded figure approaches carrying an axe with fresh blood hewn across the blade. Tensions rise as he enters the house. Fortunately, it's the hermit I was looking for and he's not here to kill me, rather than that he wants to have dinner with me. Get in. Then I realise this man is voiced by none other than the man who played Chris Finch, or Finchy, in The Office, the UK Office. And of course that is rather innocent if you want to use real names. His portrayal of Laura Fnar in these opening scenes really shines. There's something gravelly and, distinct about his voice. It's very good. We go to what I assume is the main hub city of Diablo 4, and Laura tells me that after sharing the night with me, he's really busy and has to go. Alright then, it was fun while it lasted. I'm left to my own devices and decide it would be best to find some quests to do. I work through the side quests one after the other while I explore the wilds around town, and I made my fatal mistake. Diablo 4 is a live service game in that it's always online and the other players can be seen and interacted with out in the wild. There are time limited events here too, some of which have been designed for cooperation with others in order to clear them. I walk into one of these events with a gormless grin on my face, thinking I'm about to do some really cool event and get some nice loot for my barbarian. How wrong I was. Instead, a big goatee demon appears and he is very angry. There are tethered summoners all around him who I have to kill in order to hurt him in the first place, so I set to work doing so. I was quickly overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies that are chasing me around the dome as I tried to turn the tide of battle. The big goatee man goes for a big two-handed overhead axe swing and I am bested, killing me instantly in one mighty action from a formidable foe for a lowly level 7. And that was the end of Leandra I. She died there and then. No hope of continuing. No further trysts with random plot intensive characters, possibly. I don't know. Not even high enough level to be consigned to the Hall of Heroes with anyone lucky enough to reach level 10 in hardcore. GG's. So I started again. I made the same character preset, the same class, and yes, the same name. It's time for the rise of Leandra II. One minor change, I did not choose hardcore mode this time. I speedrun through the start of the game, back to the main town where I got to before, and then I slowed down again. Obviously I'd seen all the cutscenes at this point, so the surprise was gone. It's hard to truly appreciate the beauty of the game without playing it. A video can give you a general idea of the graphical fidelity, however I found myself noticing things while we played the game. The icy areas are truly outstanding. The way the snow and ice shimmers in the light, it's really exceptional. I managed to reach max level during the beta event with Leandra II, and I made my way through various primary quests. Unfortunately, some of the quests that came up in my log were not progressible in the open beta due to their locations being locked. So when you try and go to one of these locations, it comes up and says this is a restricted area, turn back or you'll be warped out. This of course is not a big deal, however a disclaimer on the areas on the map might have helped differentiate these quests. I ran various dungeons, and as I stated before, I'm not a barbarian veteran. I did have a genuinely difficult time with some of the dungeon bosses, to the point where I left the dungeons and I just went and did other things to level up. I did have success with some others though. A necromancer named Green ran into me on a mountainside and asked me to party up. I gladly accepted as I could use the help. We set off adventuring together and I managed to clear a few dungeons, and there was one main primary dungeon that I got stuck on that he helped me do. It was a main story dungeon in the pursuit of Lilith. I had to stop shortly after, so I sent Green a friend request. Next time I logged on was for my final session with Leandra before she hit max level. Green had invited me to their clan, which I gladly accepted. Cheers. I continued to work through the game, following the main quest to the secret Haradrim base, and then secondary quests like helping a woman find her husband who'd gone off with another woman and assisting in the exorcism of men, women and children from around the city. There were some standout quests in the time that I was playing the game, and those last two I mentioned are particularly ones that stuck with me. I tried to uncover all areas of the map before I stopped playing. This led me to 2 strongholds. These are contested areas that are controlled by demons. If you clear them, the town becomes a safe place that's controlled by humans. I managed to clear one of these and turn it to the side of light. It reminded me of GTA San Andreas, when you had to fight for territories to get them for your gang. This is a part of the game too. I think someone played Guild Wars 2 back in the day and thought it was a cool idea. I think I found one whilst playing the game. In conclusion, did I enjoy the Diablo IV Beta? Yeah, I did. Do I think the game will live up to expectation? No, I don't think so, but the reason is simple. Everyone has different expectations of what the game should be. I went in with no preconceptions about how the game should or shouldn't be, and I just went on what I'd seen in Asmongold's video that, yeah, it kind of looks cool. And I found it was an enjoyable experience. I'm going to talk you through the different aspects of how it differs from the old games now, just to illustrate this point. So first off, character creation. As far as I know, other than Diablo Immortal, which again a lot of people hate, This is the first Diablo game that has any sort of customization for your characters. I know there's presets in Diablo Immortal, but I don't know if you can go further than that. I've played every entry since the original and I didn't see any options like that on the others. These cosmetic options are a welcome change for anyone who wants to make a character that isn't exactly the same as everyone else's. Obviously it doesn't make a difference when everyone wears the same armour, but that's where transmogs come in. You can make your own style. And you can change your appearance later in the game as well, so you're not locked into your first choice. In terms of class choices, in the beta there were 5, so you got barbarian, sorcerer, necromancer, rogue and druid. For the beta I chose barbarian, as my own experience with Diablo games in the past has revolved around paladin and monk. They're the most closely matched to a barbarian I could think in this case, so that's why I went with them. The class itself is melee focused, which can be detrimental to play against AoE effect enemies such as fire, poison, lightning around the enemies. You know, you're going to have a hard time, but there's a number of skills that help you crowd control and damage reduce to alleviate these issues. In terms of story, right from the opening cutscene, the game pulled no punches. The return of Lilith was a spectacle to behold, and it did a magnificent job of setting the scene. I felt immersed in the game as soon as I started playing and continued to feel this way throughout. Later in the game you see visions of Lilith through flashbacks that are accessed via blood petals found around the world. You were fed some of these when you were first captured by the mad villagers, which is why you have an intrinsic link to Lilith. These serve to connect the dots as to where Lilith is going and what she might be planning. You also run into a young girl who's looking for her mother, who has unfortunately succumbed to Lilith's charms. There's a longer story arc for this character which is unfinishable during the beta, so it will be interesting to see where this ends. I do feel that the most interesting stories revolve around Lilith and Laura. However, Laura leaves you once you reach the main town, so we'll have to wait until the game releases to see more. Other honourable mentions from the side quests were Theodore's questline, Cries of Innocence and the Sister Octavia questline, all of which were either humorous or stirred some semblance of emotion regarding the characters involved. Setting, art style and world. I titled this section in this way as I wanted to address all of these things at once. The setting is of course the same world as previous games, however you're not in Tristram, it's been destroyed. You're in a mountainous region unrecognisable from the previous entries in the series. The art style itself harkens back to Diablo 1 and 2. It's dark, gritty and visceral, and it returns to form that I think most fans want. In addition to this, the potion systems change back to quantity based. However, it is refined in a way that means you don't have to spend money every time you need more potions at the merchant. You just go to a healer and you can refill your pots. So that's pretty good quality of life. So for example, at the start of the beta, I had 4 potion charges and by the end I had 5, so there must be some progress further in the main game. I welcome those changes. Although I enjoyed Diablo 3 and its infinite refill potion, it only had 1 charge, which meant you had to build your character around surviving skills rather than using your pots. It's not a criticism of Diablo 3, it's just a different way of doing things, and 4 seems to be taking that Diablo 2 formula and running with it. The world also reminds me of Diablo 2. Everything appears to be connected by roads and traversable joins. It's all one giant world map rather than physical planes separated by different acts as in Diablo 3. Again, it's not a criticism of that game. It's merely an observation that the 4th game has followed a similar model to Diablo 2 in its world building. Genuinely, I've played more Diablo 3 than 2 and 1, to be honest. Combat. This is possibly the best change I've seen so far. Obviously we're talking about barbarian combat here, so results may vary for each class. The skill tree setup here is again an iteration on the previous game's skill systems. In Diablo 3, there were skill sets and no trees. Each skill was augmentable by a single rune. In Diablo 2 you had various trees like in Borderlands where you could pick and choose what skills you wanted. In Diablo 4 you get a skill tree with a progression line. You can level up a specific skill 5 times, and then you can augment that skill 1 or 2 times further with additional effects. This means that when I was nearly max level, I found myself re-rolling my entire skill tree so I could try to specialise only a handful of skills rather than filling the bar. This actually made me more effective in combat, as I wasn't wasting points in skills that don't work with my playstyle. As you progress to higher levels, it appears that there's an area of the 3 that has ultimate abilities. We didn't have a chance to go beyond level 25 in the beta, so I can't comment on what they're like, but the tree system itself reminded me of the one from Dragon Age Inquisition, which has loads of offshooting. You can add little bits to each skill, so it's although that's like the worst game in the series, that's kind of a good modern skill system. Yeah, I think it's good. Content. Diablo 4 appears to be broken down into various content types, which I'll try and detail here. Obviously this is a beta, so we don't know whether this is final. Primary quests, they do what they say on the tin. They're the main quest for the game, and you need to continue doing these to get through the story. Side quests, they're smaller quest lines with a more intimate group of characters usually, or they're just a ridiculous fetch quest that gives you extra XP. The majority of them have been quite good in this game, and it's just a means to get you to the next level for the story, right? Dungeons. Now this is where it gets interesting because it's an online service game. The party leader has the option to reset dungeons. This did mess me up at one point as I cleared some of the dungeons, then I joined a party and the leader reset them. The dungeons themselves are fairly standard. There's usually a boss room and you need a key or to perform a ritual in some way to open it. This upsets some people because there's too much backtracking. However, it feels like dungeons are designed in a similar way to Elden Ring. You go one way, you hit a switch, you come back, the doors open, now you can fight the boss. If we harken back to the days of Skyrim, for example, their dungeons were just a complete loop. You worked through, you killed the boss, then you got to a side chamber, you pulled the toilet flush, and then it opened a small secret door that would bring you back to the main entrance. I'm fairly sure that people didn't like those at the time either. Regardless of your own personal thoughts on this, the dungeon bosses were interesting and worth fighting. Each had their own unique moveset, and it took me a while to figure out how to beat most of them. I did have to give up on a few of them as I just couldn't deal enough damage, or I ran out of potions before I could kill them, and then succumbed to the overwhelming additional mobs that got magic flung in my face and couldn't heal. I think there are certain classes that are strong solo survivalists. Barbarian may not be the best for this. Necromancer and Sorcerer seem like the most obvious choice, but again, it's all down to player skill with the class. Yes, I failed this dungeon. It's a skill issue, we're working on a fix for it. Strongholds. Like dungeons but on the overworld, the goblins took our town, now we're going to take it back. I was really impressed with these. I found them challenging to the point that one of them was unbeatable for me as a solo barbarian idiot who knew nothing about meta builds or skill chains. The second one I took on went very similarly until I realised the final boss, of which there were 3, could be beaten if I killed 2 of the 3 at a very similar time, leaving one of the bosses with very low health so I could finish them before they spawned additional mobs that could one-shot me or constantly crowd control me into the dirt. This was my pinnacle moment of the whole beta because as soon as I rang the bell after killing the boss, the town transformed and I could see other players who'd beaten that area. The town was free and it felt like I'd actually done something good for once in my miserable existence in Diablo. I think it's fair to say I enjoyed the open beta. I didn't go into it with any preconceived notion of how good or bad it would be. Obviously I'd seen Asmongold's videos, so I had some bias there from what I'd seen, but it's very different when you play. I just went in and let the game speak for itself, and it spoke volumes. I'm looking forward to playing the full game and release and beyond. I don't know how much longevity it has as a Diablo title. However, if they implement a similar but different gameplay loop to Diablo 2 and 3, especially in the endgame, I think the game has a lot of potential, and this was just a glimpse of what we can expect. Well, that's it. My thoughts on the Diablo 4 Open Beta. Thank you for listening, and if you got this far, thank you for watching. I hope you found this video informative, and if you want to share your own thoughts, please do in the comments. Everyone has their own opinions on these things, and this is just my own. Until next time, adventurer. Safe travels.